I discovered that my mother covered for my husband while he cheated on me. She claimed she was protecting me, but her betrayal hurt just as much as his. Hello everyone, I never imagined I'd be writing something like this. My life, my marriage, my family, everything I believed in was built on lies. And the worst part? The betrayal didn't just come from my husband. It came from my mother, the woman who was supposed to protect me. She covered for him, lied for him, and let me live in ignorance while he made a fool out of me. She claimed she was protecting me, but her betrayal cut just as deep as his. Let me start from the beginning. I met my husband, Daniel, 7 years ago. He was charming, attentive, and made me feel like I was the only woman in the world. Our marriage was what I thought was strong, until I started noticing the cracks. My mother, Linda, has always been my rock. She raised me on her own after my father left, and we were inseparable. I trusted her with everything, so when things started feeling off with Daniel, she was the first person I confided in. At first, the signs were small. Daniel started coming home later than usual, blaming work for his sudden schedule changes. He became more protective of his phone, turning it face down or taking it with him everywhere. Our intimacy faded, and his excuses piled up. He was tired, stressed, not in the mood. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. But then, things escalated. One night, I caught a glimpse of his phone screen before he quickly locked it. A message popped up. Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again. My heart nearly stopped. My body went cold. I turned to him, my voice shaking, and asked, "Who was that?" His reaction was instant. He scoffed, rolled his eyes, and muttered something about a coworker sending a message to the wrong person. I wasn't convinced, but I let it go because I was scared. Scared of what I'd find if I dug too deep. I turned to my mother the next day, telling her I had a bad feeling. I expected her to reassure me, to tell me I wasn't crazy. Instead, she dismissed it. "Sweetheart, you're overthinking. Men are careless with their phones. Don't go looking for trouble where there is none." I tried to believe her. But then came the night that changed everything. Daniel told me he was going on a weekend work trip. Something about an urgent client meeting. But something didn't sit right. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked our bank statements. And there it was, a hotel charge. A 5-star hotel in our city. Not hours away. Not where his business trip was supposed to be. My stomach churned. My hands trembled as I called the hotel, pretending to be his assistant. My voice was barely steady as I asked, "Can you confirm if Mr. Daniel Reed has checked in?" The receptionist hesitated. "Yes, he checked in last night." My world tilted. I needed to see for myself. I drove to the hotel, my pulse hammering in my ears. I barely remember how I got past the front desk, how I found the room number. But I do remember the moment I knocked, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. The door opened. Daniel stood there, shirtless, his hair tousled. Behind him, a woman, a stranger wrapped in a hotel robe. Everything inside me shattered. He didn't even try to lie. His face hardened, his lips pressed into a thin line. "You shouldn't have come here." That's all he said. As if I was the problem. As if I was the one intruding. I don't know how I made it home. I don't know how I stopped myself from collapsing on the spot. I drove to the one person I thought I could still trust, my mother. I burst into her house, tears streaming down my face, my chest aching as I told her everything. And then, she sighed. Not in shock. Not in anger. But in resignation. That's when I knew. She already knew. I stepped back, shaking my head. "You knew." My voice was barely a whisper. She looked away, guilt flashing across her face. "Sweetheart, I was protecting you. I didn't want you to get hurt." My breath caught. I felt like I was going to be sick. Protecting me? I thought betrayal would feel like a knife to the heart. But this? This felt like drowning. My mother's words hung in the air like a noose tightening around my throat. "I was protecting you." I wanted to scream. To tear apart the walls, to break something, anything, because something inside me had already shattered beyond repair. My mother, my own mother, had known. She had known my husband was cheating, and instead of telling me, instead of standing by my side, she had covered for him. Lied to me. Let me live in oblivion while he betrayed me over and over again. I stumbled back, my legs weak beneath me, barely able to stand. How long? My voice didn't sound like mine. It was hoarse, foreign, as if it belonged to someone else. Someone who had just been stabbed through the chest. My mother sighed, rubbing her forehead as if she was the one burdened. It's been a while. A while. The words sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. Define a while, mother. My voice had turned sharp, cold. She hesitated. 6 months, she finally admitted. Maybe more. I almost laughed. A dry, hollow sound of disbelief. My own mother had known for more than half a year, and not once, had she told me. Not even when I went to her, when I poured out my heart, when I begged her to tell me if I was crazy for suspecting something. How could you do this to me? My voice cracked. Her eyes softened, as if she actually thought she was the victim here. Sweetheart, I didn't want to see you hurt. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Well, congratulations, Mom. You failed. Because I've never been more hurt in my entire life. Her face crumpled. I thought if I ignored it, if I didn't tell you, maybe it would go away. Maybe he'd come to his senses. Maybe he'd stop. Stop? My voice was sharp enough to cut glass. You thought he'd just wake up one day and decide to be a decent husband again? And until then, what? You were just going to keep covering for him? Silence. And then, softly, I just didn't want to see you go through what I went through. I froze. What? She swallowed hard, looking down at her hands as if they held the answers. Your father, she whispered. He cheated too. My stomach twisted. What are you talking about? She let out a shaky breath. Before he left us, he had another woman. For years. I knew, and I never said anything because I thought if I just waited it out, he'd stop. That he'd come back to me. But he didn't. And when he finally left, I was broken. Completely shattered. I didn't want that for you. I stared at her, my hands shaking. So instead of warning me, instead of helping me, I broke off, choking on my own rage. You let it happen? You let history repeat itself? Tears welled in her eyes. I was trying to spare you the pain. Spare me the pain? My voice rose, shaking. Do you have any idea what you've done? You didn't protect me, Mom. You betrayed me. You let me sleep next to a man who was lying to me every single night. You let me confide in you while you already knew the truth. How could you do that? She reached for me, but I stepped back. Please, sweetheart, don't. My voice was sharp. Dangerous. Don't call me that. Don't try to comfort me. You lost that right. A sob caught in her throat, but I didn't care. I didn't care. Because while she had spent months protecting me, I had spent months being played like a fool. I turned away, my entire body trembling. I needed air. I needed to get out of that house before I said something I couldn't take back. Where are you going? She asked, panic creeping into her voice. I don't know, I said honestly. Anywhere but here. And with that, I walked out. I drove aimlessly for hours, my mind a storm of fury and betrayal. My husband had destroyed my marriage. But my mother? She had destroyed my trust. I replayed every conversation, every moment when I had suspected something and she had convinced me otherwise. The way she had brushed off my concerns, the way she had defended him when I first voiced my suspicions. Had she met the other woman? Had she covered for him when I called? Had she lied to my face, telling me he was at work when he was really with her? I wanted to scream. By the time I pulled into my driveway, exhaustion weighed me down like an anchor. The house felt different. Cold. Dead. I stepped inside and was immediately hit with this suffocating silence. No sound of Daniel's voice. No scent of his cologne. Just emptiness. And then I saw it. His suitcase. Sitting by the door. A lump formed in my throat as I took slow, careful steps toward it. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it might break free from my chest. Then a voice. You're home. I turned. There he was. Standing in the dim light of the living room, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite place. Regret? Guilt? Indifference? You packed your bags, I said, my voice eerily calm. He nodded. I figured you wouldn't want me here. A bitter smile tugged at my lips. So, that's it? You just give up? You don't even try to explain yourself? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. What do you want me to say? The truth. His jaw clenched. The truth is, I messed up. I never meant to hurt you. I laughed. A sharp, hollow sound. You never meant to hurt me? You cheated on me for months. And my mother covered for you. His eyes flickered. I never asked her to do that. But you let her, I shot back. Just like you let me believe we were okay. Just like you let me think you still loved me. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I'll send someone to pick up the rest of my things, he finally said. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. Good. And just like that, he walked past me, suitcase in hand, and out the door. I didn't cry. Not this time, because the real storm was still coming. And this wasn't over. The door closed behind Daniel with a quiet click, but the sound echoed in my ears like a gunshot. I stood there, frozen in place, staring at the empty space he had left behind. It was over. Just like that. No screaming, no begging, no last-minute confessions of love, just a man who had gotten caught and decided to leave. I wanted to feel relief, to breathe easier now that the truth was out, but all I felt was hollow. This house, the home we had built together, felt foreign. The walls seemed to shrink around me, suffocating me with memories that no longer felt real. I had spent years believing in a love that had never truly existed, trusting a mother who had betrayed me just as deeply. I sank onto the couch, gripping the fabric like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. My mind raced back to my mother's face, her wide, guilty eyes, her feeble excuses. I was protecting you. I let out a bitter laugh. Protecting me? No, she had protected him. She had watched me unravel, cry, doubt myself, and she had said nothing. How could a mother do that? And worse, how could I ever forgive her? The days passed in a blur. I filed for divorce the next morning, wasting no time. There was nothing left to salvage. Whatever love I once had for Daniel had turned into something unrecognizable, something raw, bitter, and irreversible. But my mother? That was more complicated. She called me, texted, showed up at my door. Each time, I ignored her. I wasn't ready. I didn't know if I ever would be. But on the fifth day, after hours of pacing and wrestling with the storm in my mind, I finally picked up her call. Sweetheart, don't, I cut her off. My voice was calm, but there was no warmth in it. You don't get to call me that anymore. There was silence on the other end. Then, a shaky sigh. I know you hate me right now. Hate? I let out a dry laugh. I don't even know what I feel for you anymore. Please, she whispered, her voice cracking. I can't lose you over this. Then maybe you should have thought of that before you chose to lie to me. I made a mistake, she admitted. I thought I was doing what was best, but I see now that I was wrong. I see how much I hurt you, and I hate myself for it. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to push away the wave of emotion threatening to swallow me. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to go back to the days when my mother was my safe place. But trust, once broken, wasn't easily repaired. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I'll wait, she said immediately. As long as it takes. I didn't respond. I just ended the call. Weeks passed, then months. The divorce was moving forward. Daniel tried, once or twice, to reach out, small, pathetic attempts at closure. I ignored them. I had no interest in hearing his excuses. My mother kept her distance, but she never stopped trying. She sent letters, voicemails, reminders of the love we had before this betrayal. And slowly, very slowly, I let her back in. It wasn't easy. It wasn't perfect. But I learned something in that time. Some betrayals cut so deep they never fully heal. Some wounds leave scars that will always remind you of what was lost. But healing isn't about erasing the pain, it's about learning to live with it. And I did. I moved on. Not just from Daniel, but from the version of myself who once needed to believe in lies just to feel safe. I was stronger now. Wiser. And I knew that, no matter what, I would never let someone else write my story for me again. This time, I was the author. And this was just the beginning.